Hello and welcome to the Dailies. International headlines were dominated by rising US-Iran tensions, with American military buildups, stalled nuclear talks and warnings of possible strikes shaping the coverage. Europe focused on fallout from the Munich Security Conference, highlighting a widening transatlantic rift and calls for greater EU unity. In the UK, attention centred on Donald Trump attacking Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal, raising doubts over sovereignty, Diego Garcia's future, and the strength of the UK-US alliance. American media headlines centered on escalating tensions with Iran, highlighting the largest US military buildup in the Middle East since 2003, alongside fragile nuclear talks. Domestic coverage also focused on political fallout from the Epstein files and debates over media independence and regulation. Together, headlines reflected a climate of geopolitical risk abroad and institutional strain at home. The New York Times details the buildup of US military power around Iran, underscoring how diplomacy is unfolding under the shadow of force. The visual analysis uses satellite imagery and maps and also tracks aircraft carriers, destroyers, air bases, and missile defenses positioned across the Middle East. While noting President Trump has not yet authorized strikes, the piece highlights the ambiguity of US objectives and the scale of readiness. Axios argues that a US-Iran war is edging closer, outlining 6 converging pressures on President Trump. The analysis traces the long nuclear standoff, the impact of Iran's protest crackdown, and also the symbolism of major US military deployments. It also examines Israeli advocacy for broader campaign, favorable oil market conditions, and perceptions of Iranian regime weakness, reinforcing the sense of momentum towards conflict. While diplomacy remains possible, the piece presents escalation as increasingly plausible rather than accidental. Ali Hashem warns in Foreign Policy that Iran is misreading both Washington's intentions and the pace of current diplomacy, risking catastrophic miscalculation. Drawing on past failures, including the collapse of the 2022 nuclear talks and the shock of last year's war, the author argues that Tehran is clinging to outdated assumptions shaped by the 2015 deal. With regional leverage now weakened and US patience also limited under Donald Trump, the article portrays Iranian confidence as a strategic liability in an increasingly volatile standoff. Politico reports that the Trump administration is pressing NATO to refocus narrowly on collective defense, cutting out of area missions and global partnerships. The piece details US efforts to end NATO's advisory mission in Iraq, consider drawing down Kosovo peacekeepers, and limit partner participation at the Ankara summit. Also framed as a return to factory settings, the push has indeed alarmed many allies who warn it risks regional instability, also weakens deterrence, and undermines NATO's political cohesion and public credibility within the transatlantic alliance today. The Wall Street Journal reveals in an exclusive that the Trump administration decided to withdraw all troops, US troops, from Syria, ending a decade-long military mission against the Islamic State. The piece links the move to shifting regional dynamics, including the collapse of the Kurdish-led SDF and Washington's push to engage Syria's new leadership diplomatically. Now, while officials frame the exit as conditions-based, the piece highlights concerns over an IS resurgence and doubts about relying on an untested Syrian government. American media continue to cover the California avalanche, framing it as a devastating tragedy, highlighting the high death toll, dangerous rescue conditions, and severe winter storms. Coverage stressed the risk of backcountry skiing and the warnings in place, presenting the disaster as a stark reminder of extreme weather dangers. The Washington Post combines on-the-ground reporting with meteorological analysis, detailing extreme weather, unstable snowpack, and dangerous rescue conditions. It also highlights the scale of the disaster, the risks faced by rescuers, and the broader context of powerful winter storms battering the Sierra Nevada. The piece indeed underscores how climate-driven extremes are amplifying avalanche risks in the American West. Back to Iran, as it was also in the spotlight in Israeli media, which reported heightened alert over possible U.S. strike on Iran, with officials warning the decision window may be days or even weeks away. Coverage stressed close coordination with Washington, military readiness at home, and also growing doubt that diplomacy alone will prevent escalation. Israel Hayom reviews mounting signs that U.S.-Iran diplomacy is nearing collapse, with Israeli officials warning that American military action could come within days or even weeks. It details U.S. intelligence assessments that Iran is unwilling or unable to meet core demands, despite offering limited nuclear concessions. The piece emphasizes the escalating U.S. military buildup, increasingly blunt warnings to Tehran, and Israel's cautions alignment with Washington. Overall, it frames the moment as a closing diplomatic window overshadowed by imminent risk. Israel Hayom also reviews growing speculation over the timing of this possible strike, contrasting alarmist signals from Israeli insiders with market-based forecasts. It highlights how former intelligence chief Amos Yadlin's televised travel warning suggested imminent danger, while polymarket data points instead to late March as the likelier flashpoint. By also contrasting expert warnings with betting market data, the article suggests that market behavior offers a cooler, more data-driven check on heated political rhetoric. In the UK, headlines focused on President Trump's turning against Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal, calling it a big mistake and throwing the agreement into doubt. British media framed it as a serious blow to UK-US relationship, especially with Diego Garcia's strategic role amid Iran tensions. The story was widely linked to Trump's hardening stance on security, sovereignty, and also military readiness. The Telegraph argues that Donald Trump has indeed warned Keir Starmer against handing sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, framing the move as a direct risk to Western security. It centers on Diego Garcia's role as a vital U.S. base for potential strikes on Iran, not historical disputes. The piece portrays Trump's intervention as strategic rather than ideological, stressing deterrence, military readiness, and alliance discipline at a moment of escalating confrontation, when control of hard power matters most globally. The Times examines whether the United States is heading toward war with Iran, arguing that the scale of U.S. military deployments makes conflict increasingly plausible, though not inevitable. It indeed reports that Trump is considering a weeks-long air campaign that could define his presidency, while remaining wary of political and military risks. The piece includes many diagrams. One of them illustrates the concentration of carrier destroyers and submarines already positioned near Iran, also underscoring readiness for sustained operations. Another diagram visually contrasts overwhelming American air and naval power with Iran's reliance on missiles and proxies, highlighting both U.S. dominance and the danger of Iranian retaliation that could escalate the conflict. The Times also reviews why Donald Trump has publicly turned against Keir Starmer's Chagos Islands deal, branding it a strategic error. It argues that Trump's shift is driven less by legal or diplomatic concerns than by hard security calculations and domestic politics. Now, with tensions rising over Iran, control of Diego Garcia, as we've mentioned, has become central to U.S. military planning. The piece also portrays the deal's collapse as a warning that alliance ties under Trump hinge on power, not process. That's it from us today. Thanks for watching the Dailies only on Al Arabiya English.